Okay, awesome. So, well, first of all, thank you so much for joining. Thank you everyone for joining. It's a pleasure to have you here, Alistair. First of all,
Absolutely.
happy New Year. And
Yeah, you too.
yeah, so I'm gonna quickly go over the structure of this interview today. So, of course, we're gonna start with your introduction,
Mhm.
followed by a few questions the team and myself have prepared for you, and then after that, we'll be having a community Q&A. So yeah. Um, Also, quick question: how do I pronounce your name? Is it
Uh,
Alistair? Is that
so
correct?
I mean that's the most common as people pronounced it. It's technically
Okay.
air, but Ali, if it's easier, then you won't have to worry.
Okay.
But
Cool. So
yeah,
Ali.
yeah, that's cool.
Awesome. So, would you mind introducing yourself to our community, just so they get familiar with who you are exactly?
Of course, yeah. Hi everyone. My name's Alistair. I'm from England, and I've been programming for a long time. And so it's a pleasure to be able to be here and to tell people about who I am and what I do.
Okay. Awesome to have you here. So, quick, reminder for the community. We, like I said earlier, we're going to be having a community Q&A towards the end of this event. So, if you have any questions for Alistair, or Ali, feel free to put them in the respective thread. It's called Q&A questions for Alistair, and it's under the announcements channel. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started with the questions. So the first one we have is, what or who motivated you to enter programming? Was it out of pure interest? Did you start to have fun, or was it something else? And when did you enter?
So I think the very first kind of interaction I had with a computer was like a really, really long time ago, probably when I was like 3 or 4. And my dad has worked with computers in his job for an extremely long time. So he kind of just messed around with Microsoft Excel, years and years ago, probably 2007, 2008. And I kind of just enjoyed it. Like I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, obviously, but there are pictures of me just messing around on Excel and my dad teaching me about basic like formats and stuff and functions and things. Um,
That's
and then yeah, it's always been fun, but I never really did much with programming until I was in Brighton once, and I have some family friends there, and we were walking back from the pier. We went to a bookstore, and I'd learned about like I was aware of HTML, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Um,
yeah.
and so I went to the bookstore and I was in the programming area and I saw a book called HTML and CSSbook.com. That was quite literally the name of it. So I went there and asked my parents if I could buy this book. And it was a thick book and I still have it. It's one of my prized possessions. But we bought that and we got home and I had an old laptop that I used to play Minecraft on. I don't think I have it anymore, but you know, we hang around on that. And I wrote my first website in 2012. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
basically where I
pretty cool.
started. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Um,
I love the history. Yeah, sorry,
yeah.
continue.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, I kind of like I didn't really progress very much, and then it came like a couple of years later, and I bought a book. Well, because the book was called HTMLCSSbook.com, and it mentioned in that there's context about JavaScript in that book. And I was like, well, I don't really know what JavaScript was at the time, but uh, I'm basically made the assumption that if there was an HTML and CSSbook.com, there would be good reason to be a JavaScript.com. Sure enough, by the same publisher and written by the same person, there's a JavaScript.com, which you can still purchase, and I still have it. I think it's very outdated now, so I wouldn't recommend buying it. But that was my very first introduction into the language I'm still writing today. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
interesting
my start.
legacy. Good story behind it. Pretty fun to hear, honestly.
It is, yeah.
Um, yeah. So moving on, our second question for you today is, what are some of your most noteworthy accomplishments from the time that you started learning to code? Got into software until date.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll touch on it later, but being able to leave school has been a huge achievement for me. It's enabled a lot of opportunities and a lot of great people to
Yeah.
meet. But I think there was a project I made in 2020 during lockdown called MoChip, which a lot of my friends are familiar with. Um, and I'm eventually going to write a full-on blog post about it because it's an extremely long story and it's very funny. It's definitely out of scope for this talk now, but there's something that I
Yeah,
can
of course.
talk about
Makes
in the
sense.
future. Um,
That's cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
those
Anything
are
else
my
or?
highlights. I
Oh,
mean,
okay, cool.
I've always just kind of been like programming, especially at school. A friend of mine, Scott, who's I think in the server.
Yeah, I
We used to
think
go
he's
together. We
in.
were at school together. Yeah. I think he might join later, maybe. So we worked together at school on projects. So I've always just kind of just been like kept quiet on things at school. It's never really something I talked about much until recently. But I think those are
It's pretty
two
neat.
highlights for sure. Yeah.
Good to hear. So, I think you already covered this, but if you'd like to reiterate, what is or currently are some of your favorite projects that you've worked on?
So I mean, one of the biggest first projects I worked on was a project called Lucomo, and this was in 2016 with Scott and another friend of mine from school. And it was
Interesting.
like the idea was Snapchat plus TripAdvisor was kind of how we described it.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was like you could search for a location and then post to a story. So you know how you have Snap Maps and you can have like
Yeah.
post to it's basically that before that existed, I think.
Wow. That's a
So
pretty
it was
interesting
pretty fun.
concept. Yeah.
Yeah, we never
Sounds
finished it,
fun.
and it was very very basic. I didn't really understand the code at the time, but Scott
Well, for
walked
the
us through it.
learning, right?
But yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anything
what
else
else was there?
or yeah?
So yeah, I mean, in February of 2020, I joined Edge, which is a company I'm not with anymore, but
Edge.gg, yeah.
yeah, Edge at GG. Yeah, it was a really really fun team, and we built a lot. Um, so yeah, Edge has been definitely an accomplishment, and also Giggle, who I joined back in May of this year. Sorry,
Yeah, that's
last year.
awesome.
Forgive me. Um,
Yeah,
and obviously a fantastic team, and I love the product, and it's nice to be able to work with people that I can spend time with in real life and stuff. And yeah, so that's definitely an
that's
achievement.
awesome. So, I feel like the answer to this is sort of obvious, but do you enjoy collaborating with other people?
Definitely. It can be hard to orchestrate, um, which is why they're brilliant tools like Linear and stuff. But
Yeah,
it's so much more motivating to be able to be working in a team, especially when you're sat in the same room together. Like it's all fine me being in my bedroom and working from my desk and even from my bed sometimes, but to be able to go and travel, and as I have done recently, I've been in America, courtesy of Giggle, which has been absolutely fantastic. It's definitely worth being in a team.
that's
You can get so
awesome.
much
Yeah,
stuff done. Yeah.
I saw the photos of the Giggle house you posted in the general chat earlier, and pretty nice.
Oh
So I
yeah,
can imagine the whole experience must be pretty fun.
yeah. They're very nice
Okay,
people to work
moving on. Yeah. So, okay, how do you cope with burnout and like balance your time?
You know what? That's a brilliant question. And I'm gonna be honest. In 2021, I kind of struggled. I
We
wish
all
I
did.
had a concrete answer to that. I struggled.
Yeah,
I think I changing projects a lot was something I did, like in terms of working on Giggle every now and then, and then working on open source or side projects and stuff. And that's something that I did quite a lot. And I also took a few commissions every now and then, like maybe once every 2 months, just as
I
other
see, I see.
income. But I wish I could tell you. It's one of my goals this year is to focus on my personal health. That being fixing my sleeping, which is going all right so far, but it's only the sixth, so we'll see how that
Yeah,
goes. As well as getting outside more, obviously. I think so to just
yeah,
improve my work-life balance is to separate what I'm doing in my room, which is should be sleeping, and try and work in an office and stuff as well. So
yeah.
that's definitely one of my
Interesting,
goals.
resolutions and aspirations for this year. And I mean, yeah, like I can't blame you for, not focusing on one thing and, the entirety of 2021. I mean, it's only human for, interest to change.
Indeed.
Plus,
Yeah.
yeah, and then 2021 was a pretty rough year for, all of us. So can't blame you there.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay, so moving on to the next segment, Bearcat, if you're available, would you be interested in, sort of talking about how, asking Alistair questions on how he, dropped out?
Yeah. So, um, great to have you on, by the way, Ali.
Thank you.
So in coming to another section, so I'm talking more about you dropping out. So starting off with the basics, what grade did you drop out in?
So it would have been the 10th in the UK, which I think equates to the 11th in the States, but correct me if I'm wrong there. But it would have been it's year 10 in England is what is the year I would have dropped out in.
All right. And when did you realize it was the right decision to drop out?
So I mean, a little bit of backstory. The first year at what's called a secondary school in the UK, I was like the teacher's pet. This was in year 7. And then that was when I kind of got serious with programming, was in year 7 as I met Scott. We bounced off each other basically. And I kind of realized in year 9, and especially till the end of year 9, that it's like this isn't for me so much. I was not doing so well in exams. I was messing around in lessons every now and then. Like I was getting on with my work, and I wasn't obviously the worst kid in the class, but school was just a drag for me. It felt like an inconvenience more than anything. And so I'd started considering other options. And obviously dropping out was the first one on the list there. So during lockdown, the very first lockdown in the UK, we started doing online school at the school I was at. And I joined the Google Meet classes, but the whole time it must have been for, I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 weeks. I ran a Minecraft server, and it was we just hopped on that the whole time. And I'm not really recommending that as like, don't go to school and start playing Minecraft. It was, in retrospect, definitely a poor decision, but it was a lot of fun, and I got work done at the same time. And I realized that I could do without school. I was still able to make money taking a few commissions and stuff during that time. So, you know, that's basically when I kind of made the decision. And then I spoke to my mum one day, and I said, I don't want to go back to school after lockdown finished. And she was taken aback by that. She's a very academic individual, and so is my father. And they both got really high degrees, so really high grades, and they went to university and got degrees and stuff. So it was kind of alien for them to hear that. But yeah, that was kind of when it all started.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you regret your decision of dropping out?
No.
Yeah. All right. So I'll let you.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. No, I don't really regret it. I acknowledged, when it was happening, that I would lose a lot of social contact, and that 100% has happened. I have, I'm not able to see my friends as much, and I knew it would happen. I just didn't really. I couldn't really fathom how much it would affect me, and I'm fortunate that it hasn't much. But I've been able to go out recently. Maybe not so much in the future anymore due to the Omicron variant, but as we're getting vaccinated and stuff, I'm able to go out and see my friends and have a night out, which has definitely been, absolute polar opposite to being locked up at home all the time, which I'm sure is something that we can all echo. But I think it was nice because I kind of left during lockdown, which meant that everyone was at home anyway. So it was like I could be at home and do school, or I could be at home and do work. And it was only as places started reopening and the situation got better for us that people were going out, and I was like, well, I'm still at home. This kind of sucks. But it's not something that I can say I wish I would stay at school because of it, because the possibilities that the opportunities that I've been given as a result of leaving school have been, they far surpass the
Yeah.
benefits.
Yeah,
of
I
the
get you. Yeah.
disadvantages.
And yeah, especially now, there's like a lot of variants, and like there's like so many like new lockdowns. It's just like a repeating process. So yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's
just more time to stay at home and work, to be fair.
yeah. So was it as catastrophic as society claims to be, or did it prove to be beneficial for you?
I mean, so far, not at all. But it's only been like a year and a half, so I can't really give a conclusive answer on that.
All right.
I mean, so far it's paid off. I'm doing what I love to do, which is obviously to write code and open source and all of that, and I get recognition for it, which is really, really cool.
All right.
And I've definitely benefited from it. It's a nice talking point as well to introduce yourself. Is like, oh, I leave school and write code. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. So yeah, no, I've definitely benefited from it. It's nowhere near as bad as it can be portrayed.
Right. So moving on to the next question, did you decide to drop out of your own? And what were some of the factors that allowed you to come to your decision?
Yeah, it was on my own. Factors is interesting because I joined Edge, I think it was February of 2020. And that was so Scott was a co-founder at that company, and so that's basically how I joined, was knowing him. And I was still at school during the time in February. I kind of started to leave in April of that year, and that's when I was like, I don't really want to go back to school. And so I kind of made the decision on the basis that I already had a job. And in the UK, it's very nice to have GCSEs if you want to go get an A level. These are examinations in England, and it's great to have an A level if you want to go to university. And for me, university is really not that great. And university is great if you want to go get a job, but you can come out of university and either enter a market that you weren't even studying for, or enter like an entry level job. So I just kind of just worked out my options and realized that I'm in a position right now where I'm being paid at a pretty, a decent amount. And I'm working with people that I love and a product that I enjoyed. So it was like, why do I have to go through all this process of examinations when the end result is going to be, the same thing? I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And for you, I'm realizing that it was actually a really good decision.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you feel after all of that happened? Were you like relieved, freed, scared, excited? Like, what were your emotions?
I'm gonna be honest. I think I was very like passive. I didn't really feel much about it. It was just like, well, this is a decision I've made, so now I've got to act upon it. I just was just kind of ready to work, basically. Yeah, I wasn't really worried, and I'm still not worried. It was just, this is my opportunity. I've got to go for this now and work hard and
All
prove to
right.
myself, to the people who were wrong about it. So
Yeah. All right. So the
Um,
next section is going to be by RMN.
sure.
Before I move on to that section, I'd like to intervene and ask a small question. So I remember you sort of briefly touched upon your parents' perspective. Would you
Yeah,
mind elaborating on what your parents' views were on you dropping out of high school? Were they accepting of it? Were they concerned? What was their point of view?
sure. So my mum is a teacher, which seems completely ironic. But she
Yeah,
was I proposed it to her, and she was like just completely taken aback. She didn't say anything actually. I said to her, I said, I don't want to go back to school after lockdown's finished, and she didn't say anything. She was just kind of like in a bit of shock. So I mean, we had lots and lots of talks, and my teachers were involved as well. There's a very nice teacher who called me once a week and basically just kind of went through what happened in that week in terms of paperwork and stuff. But my dad, on the other hand, was completely against it for like the first 2 months. I think he was like, "This is not happening." I think he was still under the impression that I was going to go to university. I mean, I'd made that decision that I was not going to go to university in like year 8. I that was never going to happen. So I think he didn't really know that. So I think it was a shock for him that I didn't want to do anything at all, basically. And I left before I'd even have done my GCSEs, so I don't actually have any qualifications to my name. So he knew that I would have done that at the time. So yeah, my mum was all right about it after a while, but it just took some persuasion. But they were both against it first of all.
at the moment, are they like chill with it, or
Yeah, no, of course they're very supportive of what I'm doing.
that's cool?
Yeah, it is. It's great to have them behind me, and my mum is very interested in different projects I'm working on, and I'll say like she wants to know like what technologies are, so I've taught her about like Redis and Postgres and stuff like that, which is it's
Oh
funny to
wow,
to have these conversations, and she's trying to understand
yeah, that's
what a
insane.
key value store, stuff like that. It's just funny. Yeah,
Yeah, it definitely is, amazing when you have like when your authoritative figures in life are supportive of what you're doing. It really,
yeah, it's
simplifies
massive.
things. Yeah.
I'm very fortunate.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. So okay, before we move on, I just wanted to tell everyone that we'll be recording and uploading this, entire conversation to Spotify in case anyone has to live midway or they're unable to attend for the rest of the event. And make sure to put your questions for Alistair in the thread called Q&A questions for Alistair. We'll be getting to them towards the end of the event. Okay, moving on. Were there any significant individuals or role models throughout your journey that helped you become who you are today? Or, people that you loved collaborating with the most?
Yeah, so I mean, I've mentioned Scott a lot already, but
Yeah.
truly he has been an absolute inspiration to me. He's been there for me all the time, and we have great chats. Honestly, I've known him for a really, really long time. So basically, we'd be in the library every lunchtime at school, and we'd just be working and working, working. And Scott would bring in 2016 and 2017, he'd bring in a copy of Eclipse, which for those who don't know is a Java IDE that's
Java.
not really used anymore. But
Yeah.
he'd bring it in on his USB stick, and he'd plug it into the school computers, and he'd be working away on his Java projects at lunch. And there's a funny story about how we met. I was in the library. This is like maybe my 3rd day at the school, so Scott's the year above me. And I saw him coding, and I was like, obviously, I was interested as well. And so I go over to him and I say, "Oh, what are you coding?" And he explained this to me. And it was on a website called Cloud9, c9.io, which unfortunately has shut down since. But for those who used it, it was an absolutely amazing site. It was basically like VS Code live share, but years before on a web browser. So he was coding on there, and I asked what he was on, and he explained C9 to me. And he gave me his username. So I go home to my mum and I say, "Oh, I've made a friend at school. He writes code as well." And she's like, "Oh, that's really cool. What's his name?" And I didn't get his name. I could only say his username. So I was like, Sodex234. And my mum was just, burst out laughing. And now that's a funny story that both those parents tell. But we've always bounced off each other, and we always had a similar interest in technologies and stuff. So yeah, we built projects together over the years, and he's a great
Wow.
person to work with. So yeah, shout out to Scott.
Amazing history. Yeah, I mean, like knowing someone in person and actually collaborating with them over software, that's probably insane. I couldn't ever experience that feeling myself because I got into the professional world recently, but must be
Uh-huh.
awesome.
Yeah, no, it's great.
I wanted to call Scott up on the stage and shed some light on the discussion, but unfortunately he isn't here. So I mean, feel free to send him the recording, the podcast. I'm sure he'd love to hear your
Yeah,
comments
I will
on.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. So I remember I discussed this with you like a few hours ago. How did you meet the Giggle team?
Yeah. So bit of context. I kind of still am, but I used to be in Sneaker Twitter. Sneaker Twitter is the shoe and reselling community, I guess, of Twitter.
Right.
And I ran an event in, I think it was January 2020, which was like a puzzle. It was like a cryptography, basic decoding kind of stuff like that puzzle. And then the winner would receive some pretty, like, actually the prize list that we got was really big. We got some big names to be able to donate a couple keys and licenses to the prize pool. And I think it totaled to like £10,000 or something that we gave away, which is really awesome. And the puzzle was pretty difficult. It took me a really long time to make, and we planned it out for like a month in the December previously. And Phineas joined. He took part in the puzzle. I don't think he took it too seriously. I think he was just doing it just for fun rather than to get a prize. But I ended up joining a call with him in the evening, and we were going through it and solving it again, basically. And he recommended me. I needed a way to prove that the order of people that came through would then receive that correct prize. So then he recommended me some crypto function to just basically to sign a message to say this is the order, to prove that I hadn't edited the message. So we did that, and I messaged Finn. I was like, "Thank you very much for helping me out. You're a cool dude." And then fast forward to like I think it was June of last year. I meet Robert. He's in the call right now. I meet Robert in London with Scott. So I met Robert on Twitter a while ago. So it was really cool to meet him in person. I've only met him once, but yeah. So we met in London, and we also met Ollie from the Giggle team. And so Ollie introduced us to Finn and a couple others as well. And we went to the office, or an office, sorry, in London. And yeah, we just chilled with Finn. It was really cool to meet them both. And yeah, just kind of became friends with that. And Finn mentioned that we were looking, or that he was looking for more developers to join Giggle. I was like, I'd be down. I messaged him beginning of the year and it's like, yo, are you still looking for people to come help out? I was like, yeah, that'd be cool if you want to come join us. And yeah, that's basically how I joined. So it all started from Sneaker Twitter, basically.
That's really cool. I mean, that's a interesting, sort of journey from going to, sneaker Twitter all the way to working on a startup with them. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
And I mean, I love
it is,
using
yeah.
Giggle myself. Like, I use it
Well, thank you very
at least
much.
once every week. Yeah, it's an amazing platform. So,
Thank you.
big up to y'all for building that.
Well, shout out to
And
both of you. Yeah.
yeah, okay. So moving on, when and how did your network start growing? How did you work towards gaining more exposure on the internet?
That's interesting. I think the very first kind of commissions that I sold and people that I met, for those of you, some of you might know this, MC Market, which it's
Yeah.
been an extremely long time since I've visited that site, but that is where I kind of met the first people that I was selling to and talking to and stuff. So yeah, basically MC Market was how I first started meeting people. And then 3 people, you meet people, and 3 people, you meet people. And then 2017, I signed up for Twitter. I didn't really use it until 2019 properly. But at that point, it was just like that. You could just talk to people and stuff. I got LinkedIn in 2019, I think, and I connected with the CEO of Edge. This is how I joined Edge. Basically, I connected with him, and he knew who I was through Scott, basically. So I think it's just important to be on a lot of social platforms
Yeah.
and just speak to people, because you meet people through people, and it's like there are some big names, high profile individuals that are, one or two contacts away, and you might not know that, but you can definitely just speak to a lot of people. It's great being in communities like this and seeing new faces and stuff. So
That's
yeah,
awesome. Yeah, and
just
we
talk.
appreciate the shout out to the community. Okay, so moving on, what would be your advice for younger software engineers looking to go down similar path? And when I say similar path, I mean considering dropping out.
I would say do open source. You don't have to do it like a ton, obviously, but just make sure that you have like a public profile that's showing off what you're doing. It doesn't even have to be open source. Just have on your GitHub profile or anywhere. Just publicly. This is a few things that I've worked on.
Yeah.
And make sure that if you would like to consider dropping out, it's obviously I can't just say it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's very case by
Subjective,
case,
yeah.
indeed. But you just have to figure out what your options are. If it's even like going to be worth your time, like are you happy at school? Do you enjoy school? Would you be able to benefit from school? Like, there's no way I could walk into a like a level 3 AWS architect and get paid $200,000 a year. There's no way I could do that because they just wouldn't accept me. They wouldn't even read my CV if I submitted to them because there's just no grades on it. But that's fine because I'd rather work in startups and stuff, and I really enjoy the tight knit. Everyone's doing everything in a startup. You all know what's happening, so I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
So yeah, just consider your options. Consider why you want to do it in the first place, rather than just because you want to be able to say that you left school. Yeah, you just got to really think it through. And if
Sounds
you already have a consistently paying job, then it might be worth considering it. You might be worth thinking about it because you have
makes
money that's
sense.
coming in, and you
Passive,
don't
yeah.
need the grade to get that job because you've already got the job. So
I mean, yeah, I can see your perspective on it. Definitely, it's a very sensitive decision. So you have to carefully take all the sort of complications and
there's a lot to think about.
yeah,
And
right,
I mean,
right.
I was speaking to my teachers, who called me, once every few weeks. One of the options that I was proposed with was to do a single subject at school, and I probably wouldn't even have to come in on some days. And to be fair, I probably could have done that, and it would have been fine. I could have done both. I just chose to not. But it would have been fine if I just did one subject. I probably just picked like computing or English or something. But
Yeah,
I didn't. So just speak to your school if you'd like to, and speak to yourself first of all. I know that's really really corny, but you got to figure out why you want to do it in the first place, not just because you've seen someone else do it. Like, is it worth it for you?
mm,
So it's very 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 subjective.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so what are your long term aspirations? Do you want to work in a startup? Do you want to what exactly do you want to do with your career in the future?
Definitely continue working in startups. I love working in startups. Everyone's extremely friendly and close to each other.
Mm,
Small teams are really really cool to be in. The end goal would be able to retire early and have something of my own running. With a steady income coming in every year. I don't know what
yeah,
that startup would be, but if the idea
that's
comes to me and
really
it's good,
yeah.
then I'll have a build it. So that's
Do
the end
you
goal.
yeah, sorry. Do you intend to continue with Giggle for a while, or do you have any
Yeah,
plans of? Okay,
yeah.
okay,
No,
cool.
Giggle are a brilliant team to work with. They're
Yeah,
extremely kind to me. I'm very very fortunate to be able to have the
best.
opportunity
Yeah,
that they've given me. So big shout out to Giggle for all of that. Yeah, no, I like continue to be with them as long as they want me there. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, awesome. So moving on, we have some additional questions, which Bearcat will handle. So feel free to
Trust.
take over, Bearcat.
All
Thank you.
right. So moving on to the next section. So what are your favorite technologies currently, and what do you plan to learn this year if you have anything specific that you have in mind?
Sure. So as you'll probably know, I'm a huge TypeScript fan. I've written a lot in TypeScript, including a lot of TypeScript only code, as in no runtime, which is a lot of fun to build. So yeah, definitely TypeScript. That's absolutely number one. I love Next.js and React. Next.js is a super powerful framework. It can even emit 0 kilobyte bundles, which is really, really cool. I've been messing around with that recently for my blog. So yeah, Next.js, React, TypeScript. And for the server, experimenting with some tech called tRPC, which is a type-safe way to build APIs, basically. It's pretty cool. And Postgres and Prisma. are a match made in heaven. It's the only ORM that I've recommended to someone who hates IRMs, and they come back to me and go, "This is really, really nice." So Prisma is super cool, and I've been able to call their team every now and then to provide some feedback and stuff on their new Prisma data cloud platform, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I think Bearcat, we have very, very similar interests in terms of tech stack. So
Yeah.
but yeah,
Actually,
So
yeah, sorry
yeah,
if I can
go ahead.
intervene.
Yeah.
So TRPC is like pretty cool. I've seen it used in the Calenzo code base, if you're familiar
yes.
with that. Quick, intervention. What are your opinions on the new framework called Remix? If you've gotten time to experiment with that.
Remix. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I've had a look at it, and I've ran the create remix project, whatever it is, command. And it felt like a lot. I was overwhelmed at the time, and I didn't really have a lot of time to experiment it, but it just felt like a lot. I was looking at a lot of code. And the way
Yeah.
that like their page routing is done in like slots in a page rather than just a whole page was really confusing to me, I think. I I should probably reread the documentation. And as I say, I only spent like 20, 30 minutes with it. But I'm so familiar with Next that I'm happy continuing with Next. And also Next's community is absolutely massive. And being built by Vercel, there's all of the power of Vercel behind it too. And obviously they are a match, designed to be made in heaven. So Vercel and
Awesome.
Next are pretty
All right.
fantastic. So
I'll let Bear take over now.
So,
Sorry.
yeah.
so now that you've dropped out, have you ever had a chance to connect with your friends back from school? Or not yet? Or yeah, I guess that's just a question. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the people that I spoke with a lot, I've been able to have a few evenings out with them, a few parties. But I'll meet old faces at parties, and it's nice to see people that I used to talk to a lot, and then I left and didn't talk to at all. So yeah, I mean, especially as we start seeing end to COVID, we'll be able to see my old friends a lot more, to go out. But as I say, I did expect to be able to, well, not to be able to, but I did expect to not to be able to speak to my friends so much. So
All right. So now we've finished like all our questions. So we're gonna move on to the Q&A.
awesome.
All right. So for the first Q&A question, going back to like the Twitter side of stuff, do you think the hype for the NFT sector is gonna last for a while, or do you think it's gonna die down over the next couple of years?
Before
Sorry, go on.
could we just
Oh yeah.
interrupt? Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is the question is by Natya Vidhan, who's working on Tire Engine. Just
Cool.
we'll make sure to introduce those
Anacha,
folks.
I hope I pronounced that right.
Yeah.
I think the hype will die down. The E.G Clubhouse situation kind of thing. Clubhouse
Yeah.
hype was huge, but
Yeah.
obviously that's I think it will die down, yeah. But I think the tech behind NFTs and blockchain and stuff is really, really awesome. I think there's a lot of innovation that we can see there. The biggest issue, in my opinion, with NFTs right now is they are so unfriendly. And I think that's also why the reason that they get a lot of hate is because people just think NFTs are you own a PNG, which is absolutely not what it is. So it's so unfriendly to get into, and it's so difficult. There's so much you got to learn that it's just not consumer ready yet. So I think once that happens, we'll see it as something that you'll be able to use every single day. Like imagine you're on Instagram, right? And someone's reposted something, but it's got proof next to the photo that who was the original artist of this. I think
Yeah.
stuff like that is like really, really powerful. I think we could see that in the future. It's just
Credibility.
yeah, the
And I
community
think
right now
something
is too
that a lot of
fucking huge.
people are like misunderstanding is that there are like things that go on behind just like you just like buying an NFT like and like holding that because like that like right click save image as like
Yeah,
there's more than just that like when you buy an
yeah,
NFT.
of course.
But yeah.
It's the logic behind, yeah.
And
Plus
that's
like
Yeah.
the
just because people
concept.
don't
Yeah.
understand.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Moving on.
the next question is also a pretty hot topic right now. What are your opinions on Web3?
Well, I think the word is so corny. It's just because it doesn't really mean much. It's just some
Yeah.
new tech.
Yeah.
But again, the tech is cool. It's a single source of truth for authentication, proving who you are and transactions and stuff. The tech's brilliant. It's just the whole community. There are
Yeah.
very few good, or like actually good people in the community. So yeah, I think once that's all kind of died down and everything levels out, we'll see some really, really cool innovation and consumer friendly applications.
All right. So the last question from Nadia is: so you're the TypeScript guy, right? So
To
what
an
are your
extent.
thoughts on TypeScript versus JavaScript, and which one you'd possibly recommend to other people?
So, I mean, obviously, I started with JavaScript, as I mentioned before. I would say if you'd like to learn TypeScript, which is definitely the better alternative, get a full understanding of JavaScript, basically, including more advanced concepts like promises and closures and stuff like that. And then if you'd like to pick up TypeScript, which will save you a lot of time in the future, then absolutely do that as soon as possible. There are a lot of brilliant resources. There's a TypeScript handbook, which is a great resource to learn TypeScript. I've tried to write a few guides before, but it's a lot of effort, so I haven't been able to maintain them much. But yeah, 100% TypeScript. It's a way better dev experience. And I can talk about that for hours and hours, but just to keep it concise, I would, TypeScript.
All right. So a question from Firecubes is: aren't you worried that your career opportunities will be limited by not having a high school diploma or
So
university?
yeah, no, it's a good question. Admittedly, I haven't looked very far into the future, and that's something I'm aware of. But the thing is, I receive offers for work and requests to do work frequently, so it's not like I'm not able to ever work. And also, there's something important to remember that I am still 17 and I'm at home and I live with my parents, so it's not like I have day-to-day bills and expenses and stuff. If I wanted to move out, then I'd have to look into something more sustainable. Um, perhaps be working more, but I'm comfortable at home and I'm in no rush to be earning a high paid job. So for the time being, I'm all good. I'm not worried.
All right. So the
Yeah.
next Q&A questions are for Aryaman to take over.
Yeah. So okay, aren't you worried that your career opportunities will be limited by not having a high school diploma? And I feel like you already answered this, so I'm gonna sort of phrase this. Aren't you sort of scared that you won't have a fallback if a startup doesn't work out, let's say?
No, I mean we can always move on
Yeah.
to other positions, and I've had, as I mentioned just a minute ago, we had like other offers and stuff. So startups failing is it happens all the time. And you have to bite the bullet with that. It's you take a risk, obviously. But as I mentioned, I'm still young. I live with my parents, so it's not like I have to be earning a lot to be able to survive. And I take
Same.
that for
Yeah.
granted. I think quite a lot. I'm extremely fortunate to be in the position that I'm in. So I'm very grateful for everything that people do for me. But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Next question from Sukayomi. I'm not even gonna bother pronouncing the name. Pretty sure it's some anime username. But the question is, how much has your life improved in terms of achievement and productivity after dropping out of school? Good question.
So definitely, I can be a lot more productive without having to worry about what I'm doing during the day. In terms of education. So yeah, I can definitely be a lot more productive. I think this year I'm going to definitely try to be working outside of my bedroom where possible, as I mentioned previously, and definitely work on the balance between my work and what I'm doing in my free time. Um, but I do echo on how you feel about school. It's not great all the time. Um, so it can be beneficial, and obviously I have times where it's like I'm just on my own and I'm in my room and I'm coding and it's like this is really boring and I wish I could be out with my friends or something right now. So it's not all good. Obviously you have to take the good with the bad, but I wouldn't do it any other way. So I'm happy with how things are turning out.
Awesome. Okay. Next one is for Bearcat.
All right. So this is from Andrew. He works at Hack Club. So was it hard to drop out? Were your friends and family members supportive of your decision?
So
Pretty sure
yeah,
we already asked this, but yeah, feel free to
Oh
go
well,
yeah.
for it.
If
yeah,
you want,
my
you can explain more. But yeah.
yeah, no, it's all good. My family, as I mentioned, my parents were obviously against it first of all, and ended up to persuade them, and it all happened. But my friends are always, they've always been supportive of them. I said, special shout out to everyone who's been there and said like, this is really awesome, congrats, and supported me with all my friends from school. I think we didn't tell anyone else until it happened, and then like a month after, and then my parents told my grandparents and my aunties and uncles and stuff. And at that point, it was like, oh, okay, we can't do anything about it because it's happened now. So they didn't really have obviously any input on it. I think it just kind of happened, and they were like, okay. So it's just news, I guess. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, so Vegavant asks, and I quote, "How does it feel to have the heavenly Discord One Piece plushie?"
A One Piece plushie.
Yeah,
It's an extremely exclusive club. So no, I'm kidding. It's a cool plushie. It's a staple of Discord, I guess. So I've been a Discord user for a long time, so it's nice to be able to have something to say
lovely.
about that. Yeah, no, I
Um,
love it.
yeah. Okay, moving on. So Alfie, that's working on Oberon, asks, "How long did it take for you to decide that school wasn't the right path for you?" Pretty sure you know Alfie, right?
Yeah. Hi, Alfie. Yeah, it was kind of during year 9, as I mentioned previously. And then I obviously lockdown happened, and I got a job in February. So it was like, why am I continuing to do this? Um, when I have a paying position, and I can keep working without having to go through all of the pain of examinations in school and stuff. So yeah.
Good answer. Berk, feel free to move on to the next question from Uday. Berk, either. Okay, it's fine. I
I
can take it.
it's
Okay, yeah, my bad. Wait, okay, so this is Berk. Okay. So Uday, that's working on basically.email, asks, "Is dropping out a good idea? Are you happy with your current position in life?"
So I mean, I think I covered why it's a good or potentially bad idea previously. But happy with the position I'm in, 100%. I have so much time on my hands that I can, build what I want and work when I need to. Yeah, it's definitely benefited me without a doubt. And obviously, I've mentioned the trade-offs previously, but yeah, no, I'm happy with the position that I'm in at the moment.
Awesome. So Scott has quite a few questions, honestly. And first of all, that was a great answer.
Thank you.
Scott has quite a few questions, and in my opinion, these are great questions. So I can't wait to ask these. Okay. So the first question is, how did you have security in dropping out of school? Did you have immediate opportunities to go to?
Sure. So I mean, obviously, Scott knows the answer to this. So he basically got me a job in February. That was at Edge, and so that was the somewhat security that I could just be like, this is where I'm earning money. At first of all, when I joined, it was low pay in the grand scheme of things for a software engineer. But as time went on, obviously you did get a raise, and there'd be a trial period for a few months as well as is common in positions at jobs. So yeah, I guess that was the security.
Interesting. Okay, the second question is, at what point did you feel like you went from hobby writing projects to understanding larger, more professional code bases? Good
That was
question.
definitely during my time at Edge. 100%.
Ooh.
It was because I think the difference between like a beginner code base and something that would just be like a hobby thing and a large scale project would be using multiple services. And by services, I mean expanding out into multiple databases, Postgres, Mongo, Redis, messaging between services. So like Amazon SQS, Amazon SNS, and emailing like Amazon SES. So I mean, I'm mentioning a lot of AWS services there, but it's just when you're using like a lot of different platforms together, and especially messaging is extremely common between services and professional code bases. So I think that was
Cool.
definitely a benchmark for me.
Good answer. Okay, moving on. What are the differences in team communication, administration, and planning when working with a formal company rather than just an online project? Again, a very good question.
Yeah. Meetings with the team, obviously. I guess you can do something in a hobby project and have a couple meetings, but properly with with everyone in the call, and there's like an agenda and notes taken and stuff like that. That's really useful in communication. We did another team meeting at Giggle a couple of days ago, which was really, really beneficial. Administration is interesting. I can't really speak for that so much because I was never really part of the administration at Giggle or really at Edge. It kind of just happened and continues to happen. So I can't really speak for that much. But planning, I would say feedback from users. It's really nice to be able to have users on an application that are like giving you feedback all the time there, and you're able to write that down and produce linear tickets. Linear, for those who don't know, is a fantastic
Amazing.
issue tracking
Yeah.
app. Absolutely love it. So yeah, planning on Linear is brilliant, and they've got great resources to do like roadmaps and stuff like that. So
Yeah, it's insane. It's a very simple tool and it's super easy to use. I personally
yeah,
like Linear,
yeah,
and I'm sure a
Linear's
lot
actually
of folks
fantastic.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the final question from Scott is, what do you believe defines a successful project?
Obviously, there's the quantifiable, value of you're making profit. You can count money. If you're making a profit, then you've got some good idea at the very least for a long term. But also, I think users, like having a lot of users on an application is proof that you've got a good idea, right? So recently at Giggle, we hit 100,000 users, which is
Traction.
it's incredible.
Insane,
It's
yeah.
a huge benchmark for us, milestone, sorry. And it's like, this is a good idea. It's people like to use Giggle, so it's really, really cool. So
People
obviously
do.
we have, actual countable figures, but when you have the social feedback of people that are like, this is really nice, then it's very fulfilling. It's very satisfactory. It's like you worked hard on this and now people are using it and you get that feedback. So
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, moving on, Bearcat. Feel free to ask the next question from Unreal G.
All right. So from Unreal G, so he asks, what processes do you go through, if any, towards joining or contributing to startups?
yeah, that's a good question. So joining startups are definitely networking on Twitter and places like that, being able to speak to people online and seeing what they're building and stuff, getting in contact through them. That's great. And also for exposure, I think just taking commissions was a great way that I started out. As I mentioned previously, MC Market was where I started selling. And it was for very low, very, very low prices at the time. But I was a kid and I was using my dad's PayPal or something like that. So, it was very, very basic. But from that, you're able to speak to other people and meet new people and get feedback, and people can vouch for your work and stuff and recommend you to other people. And so, perhaps someone is going to need a website done and they're going to ask their friends who's previously had a website done, like, oh, you got a new website, who did it? And they'll be like, oh, it was Unreal G. And, then you'll get your job like that. So just taking commissions and meeting people is, in my opinion, the number one way.
That's cool. I love the personal touch you added to the the answer. Okay, so Kevin from Minecraft Dog Global also has a few questions. So his first one is, how confident were you in your decision and your ability to code when you dropped out?
Hi, Kevin. Yeah. So confident in my ability, I think I was able to say that I was confident enough to be able to leave school, was because of the fact that I was, earning money in a job, at a position, and receiving a salary for something is, I think it validates skills, that you're good enough to be able to be paid a salary. So I think that was my benchmark. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, that's good. Okay, so the next question is, good question again. What startups are you looking forward to in 2022? Free shoutouts for any.
Oh, looking forward to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, there is a bit of software that's been very popular on Twitter recently for the JavaScript community called Bun, Bun. And Bun is some super, 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 super cool tech. Right now, it re-implements the Next.js standard, and it's like a super, super fast bundler for JavaScript. And I think there's always a lot of innovation in the JavaScript community, especially the Jamstack and web dev community, for super fast compilation time and stuff like that. You might have heard of SWC, which was recently
Yeah.
implemented into Next.js, which is Speedy Web Compiler. That's what it stands for. So I think it's really cool to see innovation in that area. I think we're going to get, and we talked about future plans for Bun and stuff. So I think there's a lot to look out in that direction. I don't know how much I can say about it, so I won't say too much. But Bun is looking very promising. So
That's cool.
definitely keep an
Yeah,
eye out.
that's an interesting, product, cool startup. Regarding what you said about, innovation, stopping, I doubt that's gonna happen. People will always find, new things to add to existing.
Yeah.
People always find fault in things, and I mean that's not necessarily a bad thing, but of course, Innovation will continue. That's what I personally believe. Of course, it's a very subjective matter. Okay, so his last question, Kevin's, is where do you see yourself at the end of this year?
I'd probably still be at home, and I'd like to have bought a car. Buying a car is probably one of my goals for this year. I've been learning to drive at the moment.
Oh,
It's
damn.
really, really fun.
Interesting goal.
Yeah, so it'd be really cool to have a car by the end of the year. In terms of work, I'd still like to be with Giggle. That'd be superb. I'd like to have started something for myself that would be earning a little bit of money on the side.
Hustle, yeah.
Might be Stream Ticker, which I've recently released with Jack LaFond. But I don't know how we're going to monetize that. But yeah, it'd be cool to have something just on the side, bringing a little bit of passive income every now and then.
That's awesome.
But yeah.
Okay, so Bearcat, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and handle the rest of the questions that are in the thread.
Yeah.
We've just selected. Okay, who. Okay, so I'll ask, how do you manage your social life currently that you don't attend school or college?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
good
social.
question. I mean, I think one thing that's been cool for me is all of my closest friends are on Discord, right? So I can hop on and play games with them, and I have done almost every single night since out of school. Like, I call my friends almost every single day. And for our generation, at the very least, it's like second nature to us. We live and breathe on our phones, so being able to call someone feels like you're calling them or talking to them in real life to an extent. Obviously, it'll never be the same, but it's like it's so similar. It's still socializing. So I've been lucky that I've been able to leave and still have a load of people that I can talk to who care about me and I care about them. They're some of my closest friends. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
no, I think that's cool.
Very heartfelt, very wholesome. Bearcat had a question he wanted to ask before I continue, so feel free to ask that.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask actually, what are your thoughts about balancing coding with memes?
So okay, this is actually a good question, genuinely, because if you look at places like LinkedIn, for example, you'll see so many people talking in this really cringe professional, like, "Oh, congrats on the new role," and just stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, that's fine, but it's so fake, It's funny to just be yourself and have a laugh online and joke about things and post just memes, right, on Twitter and things, and you can still have a big following. Like, take Elon Musk, right? He posts memes on his Twitter. He's multi-billionaire. So I think the whole professional talk is just it's suffocating, if I'm honest. You can just hear so much of it. It's just boring to listen
Very
to. So
descriptive.
just be
Yeah,
relaxed.
LinkedIn isn't necessarily a great platform for our generation.
I really
I
dislike.
mean, it's sort of like you're sort of obligated to have it if you're in the startup space, but you're not
Yeah.
comfortable using it. If that makes sense.
No, I fully agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Varun from High Delight asks, "Hey, I'm Varun. My questions are, what do you think about freelancing, and do you personally freelance?"
Yeah, freelancing is great. It's how I started out, and technically, I still freelance at Giggle. That's my contract is I'm technically an outside freelancer. Although, as I said previously, the community, not community, but we're all very tight knit. Yeah, freelancing is brilliant. It's a great way to be able to meet people very quickly. You can hop on and off projects as you would like to. You can get paid pretty well for freelance work too. So freelancing is great. If you're looking for a more stable income, you'll want to look into startups, for example, or even a corporate job if you're going to go down that route.
Intern, yeah.
Yeah, or an internship indeed.
Yeah.
You can't guarantee a stable income if you're freelancing because you can't always guarantee clients. But
Makes sense.
I think it's great to start out. So 100%.
Yeah. Okay, second question was, which one do you prefer, or which one do you think is better? Doing work for clients on Upwork or Fiverr, or working for someone via contracts?
So I've personally never used Upwork or Fiverr. My freelancing has only been done to friends, or became friends through the work, basically. So especially from Sneaker Twitter, they've been very good to me. I've been able to meet a lot of people there and get work through Sneaker Twitter. I think if you can join a community that you enjoy, then you'll be able to write code for projects that you are going to enjoy because it's your kind of it's your hobbies. So I'm interested in shoes. Joining Sneaker Twitter was great because I can build projects for shoes. So it's a bit of a niche.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So just
interesting.
meeting people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see much in the sneaker space, honestly. So that's pretty interesting to see someone, working, dabbling with products in that industry. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ultron Gaming asks, how do you get started with a new technology you want to learn? In brackets, it's sort of a generic question, but I want to know your point of view.
Yeah, so that's very valid. There's this thing in the community, in web dev community, called JavaScript fatigue or framework fatigue, and it's just the principle that there are so many projects releasing that you just get tired of it all, which is valid. And I think for the first time, I felt that with Remix recently. Um, but I think if you're happy programming with a framework and it's modern and people know it and stuff like that, and it's battle tested and production ready, then you don't have to move on to new technology. Because people are already familiar with it. You can publish source code, open source, and stuff like that. You can get contributions, and because people are already familiar with it, you're going to have a huge community with it. If you got to remember that your end user doesn't care. Your end user doesn't care
Yeah,
what tech stack you're using. If you're using GraphQL, which I dislike, that's another topic. If you're using GraphQL or TRPC or Express or Fastfire, whatever, your end user just has no idea, right?
it just
So
needs to be functional and idle. Yeah, makes
if you can
sense.
ship a product with tools you're already familiar with, that is going to take you way further than having to learn a new thing just because it's modern and flashy. Which is kind of still why
Yeah,
I'm holding off on Remix, because I'm happy with Next at the moment. It just feels JavaScript fatigue again. So
that's a very fair argument. It's something that I would personally, agree with, side with. Yeah, okay. So Floating Owl asks, what do you think about C++, Java, Rust, Go, etc.? Those lower level systems languages.
yeah, so I've worked with Java and Go. I tried to learn C++ this year. Didn't go too well, but I was alright at it. I can now read most C++ and most C, which is pretty cool. I struggle to write it though. Rust is something I'd like to pick up this year. I don't know it. It would be really, really cool to get to grips with the Rust code base. Perhaps
Same.
contribute to some Rust open source. I know there are a lot of Rust devs here, so that'd be nice. But obviously, being so close to bare metal, you just get ridiculous performance. So I relearned Vlang recently, which is extremely, new and somewhat beta language. But you're so close to your CPU that you can just get ridiculous performance, and it's obvious it's obvious that you can write apps in TypeScript and Node and V8 and stuff, and have your whole stack in JavaScript, and it's easy. But if you want to really, really scale, if you have an extreme use case for performance, and system languages obviously are going to take you further.
Interesting. What inspired you to learn V? How did you come across it? And what made you want to learn it?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Yeah, sure. So I was asking, what made you want to learn V, and how did you come across it?
Oh, V, right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I discovered it last year. I can't remember when. Through someone called Leia. I won't pronounce her surname because I'll definitely butcher it, but I can send her Twitter in chat. She used to contribute to Vlang. She's a good friend of mine. She's very nice, and she basically helped me out and got me learning with it. Because it's always fun to just expand your portfolio of languages. So
Yeah.
picked it up then, and I wrote a Supreme, which is a streetwear brand, a restock monitor to detect when some product restocks. So I wrote a monitor for their site, and it
Oh, yeah, I
quickly
saw
ran
that
like
on your
about,
GitHub. It was pretty
yeah,
neat.
I called it VStock monitor, obviously pun intended.
Yeah.
Very poor name, but yeah, it was good fun, and I enjoyed writing it. It's a very easy language to write. It looks like Golang, but obviously you're on bare metal. You're next to the CPU, so it's cool. It's
Awesome.
fun. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so Joseph asks, what do you think about schools in the UK pushing for kids to learn Python and move on to more complex languages like JavaScript? Do you believe there's a better way school can go about teaching computer science? Good question.
Uh, yeah, this is great, Joe. Joe's actually a friend of mine from school, so
Oh, that's
it's
cool.
interesting. So I think learning Python obviously is a brilliant first programming language. I don't really like seeing production in big sites. I'm not a huge fan of Python. But obviously it proves itself. I think YouTube is mostly written in Python, and so is Discord's API. So it can be fine in production. But I think there are better languages that you can write an HTTP API server in. Which is why I think JavaScript is probably one of the best first languages that you can learn. I think
Yeah.
Java is also a great first language, although it is definitely harder. learning about data types so early on and concepts like generics and things will take you so far. And getting them under your belt, first of all, will help you prevent making beginner mistakes and stuff. So
Yeah,
I
I
think,
100% agree. Yeah, I 100% agree because these sort of languages are the foundations is the foundation for learning any other
right.
language. You need to be well acquainted with the common principles in order to be able to learn something complicated or more
Languages
complicated.
steal a lot of principles from other languages, right? So
Yeah,
once you
exactly. They all
learn
share
one
very
language,
yeah
I think I wouldn't have been able to learn Java as quick as I did if I hadn't learned TypeScript. Because, for example, like generics and obviously, data types, picking up
yeah
Java was so simple because A, the syntax is similar, but all the principles I can just apply. I can just apply them and be like, oh, I already know
exactly.
this.
Yeah.
So
It's just the syntax that differs. That's pretty cool actually.
it
This is the
is.
opposite
Yeah.
for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Same here.
learned Java first, followed by TypeScript. But yeah.
Good.
Okay. So Ewan asks, I'm not able to understand this question. So if you could elaborate on it, Ewan.
That's an
Um.
inside joke.
Okay. Okay. Should I ask it or?
No, you're okay.
Okay. Cool. Natya Vidan, working on Tower Engine, asks, "What is serverless Discord OAuth?"
Serverless Discord OAuth is a blog post I recently wrote about. It's a way, it's a method to have OAuth, which is an authorization protocol that lets you authorize users from third-party applications. So, for example, if you ever gone onto a website and it says sign in with Google or sign in with GitHub, that will use OAuth. And so serverless Discord OAuth is my implementation and guide about implementing OAuth serverlessly for Discord. So Discord has an OAuth feature for the developers, and so it lets you have a sign in with Discord button, and then running that serverlessly can be a challenge. So that's what I wrote about basically. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, OAuth is amazing. I can't imagine myself using the traditional email and password login on any site.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
always use OAuth. It's just so much more convenient.
same.
Yeah.
Google OAuth is the best, in my
Yeah.
personal opinion.
It's good.
Okay, so Jack from AMC. I like Jack's questions. They're very, elaborate and relevant. Even from the last interview, they're pretty good. So, okay, his first question is: you mentioned you enjoyed working on startups and plan for the foreseeable future. What would you do if given the ability to work a high-paying job at a prestigious tech company? And prestigious is in quotes.
That is a good question. So if it was like absolutely unconditional, as in you've got the job, would you say yes, kind of thing? I mean, there's more to it than just salary. Like, obviously, being able to say you've worked at a prestigious company, E.G, Google, is a pretty cool thing to be able to have written down. But I still really enjoy being able to be in a small community at startups. And as well, being a startup, you are taking a risk, but you can also look into stuff like shares. And if that startup does well and exits to a big name, for example, then you'll be able to make a lot of money from shares, stuff like that. So yeah, I think I'd still to stay working at startups. I really enjoy it. I've had insights into what it's like working at corporate entities, and it's just this big giant, giant company, and it's hard to get communication to seniors and to talk to um, other parts of the company, other people. Everything happens so slowly, and I think it's really fun to be able to build quickly and to iterate and to get new features out. And feedback cycle is so fast. You're so out of the loop at a corporate company. You don't hear from users, and you have like access is restricted to everything, and you work on a single thing only. I don't know. I would just find it so boring. So yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, great answer, first of all. And second of all, moving on to second question, Jax. Since you're so young and have great income at your age, are you doing anything to support your financial future? This is also a very important question, in my opinion. I feel like it's very relevant to a lot of our audience as well. So it's a great question again.
Yeah. So I put money into an ISA in England, which is a way to have tax-free profits on index funds or stocks and shares. So because I'm under 18, it's what's called a junior ISA, and then when I'm 18, I can withdraw all the money. But I'm just going to keep it there because it makes a lot of money. So I've got something called VUSA, which is tracked on Vanguard. It tracks the S&P 500, which is an index fund. So I think that's very specific. But what I'm getting at is just be smart with your financials. There's like the 50, 30, 20 rule, which if you Google, I won't go into it now, but 50, 30, 20 is a good way to budget your money. And honestly, if you can buy something, like if you want to buy something, right, make sure you could buy it maybe 2 or 3 times before you'd be able to have no money. I think that's a good. Obviously, not for something like a house or a car. You could probably finance that, but well, obviously a house. But it's just be smart with your budgeting. And if you want to look into investing in stocks and shares, then look at index funds because they're very safe, and you can't really go wrong with the S&P 500. So
That's a very elaborate answer. It sounds like you have your stuff planned out, and very interesting
well, I'd
concept
like to
again.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, before I move on, just wanted to, mention if anyone has any more questions, please put them in the thread because we will be ending this shortly if no questions are received. Okay, so the next question that we do already have is from Ari, Vegavon, who's working on Snaps. Okay, so what is it like having your investors based in the US but having your offices in Europe? Why do you think the EU is experiencing a startup brain drain? And are you someone that wishes there could be a stronger startup scene in the EU, Europe?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're all from, well, not all of us, but we're mostly from England, the Giggle team. So I think to have the HQ, so to speak, in London is really nice. I'm able to travel there pretty quickly, on the train and be able to stay with them for a few days and then head home again, which is pretty cool. The reason that we have the reason that our company's registered in the States is for United States VC, so that we can receive the capital from the States. I do think it'd be cool to have a stronger startup scene in the EU. There's probably a reason for it. I don't really know enough about the economics of it, but there's probably is a reason for it why there aren't more people. People moving to Silicon Valley to work on their startup in LA and San Francisco. So I don't know. It's not really a big deal for me. It's not like I want to move. Well, I would move to the States eventually, maybe for a few years, but I like
That's
England and
cool.
I think there's beautiful countryside here and stuff like that. So
That's
I think
awesome.
I'll stay
Are you
here
like
for a
someone
while.
else? Sorry, continue.
No, you're good. Yeah, you're good. Let's finish.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, so I was just asking you someone that has to like frequent the states or anyone in your team due to the official location being the United States.
Are you saying would we move there?
No, I'm saying do you have to like frequent the states?
Oh, do I go frequently? Sorry.
Yeah, you have to like frequent it. Yeah.
Oh no. So I went once. In fact, it was my
All
first time
right,
in
the trip.
America. Was last November, December. I think some of the team, are considering moving to the States. But I think I'll stick in the UK for the time being, especially because I'm learning to drive and I've got friends here and stuff. So I'll stay here
That's
for the time
nice.
being. But yeah.
Make sure to put your questions in the thread, guys. Because we're almost done here. So, okay, Varun from Hyderlight asks, um, he has a few questions on your project, Sukodo, on Giggle. So, okay, first question is, why do you choose JavaScript over Rust, Go, etc.?
So I haven't actually worked on Sukodu. So I'm gonna have to pass on this, unfortunately. It was written
Okay, that's fine.
by as Ewan mentioned, Liz and Rob
Liz
from
and
the
Robert,
team.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm sorry, I wouldn't be able to answer this.
No, it's cool. Okay, Floating Owl again asks, what do you think about Elixir?
I don't know it enough. We do use it a lot at Giggle. I don't. It's great for real-time services. There's great support and big community. And the Erlang VM is super fast. So yeah, it's a pretty cool language.
That's awesome. Chief asks, just curious, what are your views on the idea of the metaverse and whether it will become mainstream?
So I think this whole metaverse it's a massive buzzword. At the moment we have metaverses, like we have VR chat. That's it's pretty much a metaverse. It's not as decentralized as perhaps some other people would like, but I think the whole concept of a metaverse in itself just means an open world game. At least in my opinion. I don't think there can be much innovation in the whole principle of a metaverse. I think the innovation comes from hardware and companies funding it and stuff. And obviously the big name that springs to mind is Meta, Facebook, with Oculus. They have sold a ton of Oculus headsets this Christmas, and I think the Oculus app was number one on the App Store for a while on the iPhone App Store in the States, which just says a lot about how many were
Interesting.
sold. I think it's going to be cool to see a lot of people, hopping around in VR and working and stuff in there. But I think it's important to disconnect and touch grass, as some people would say, which is rich coming from me. But hopefully this year I'll be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I personally don't believe much in the metaverse, if I'm gonna be honest. It could be,
Yeah.
a short-lived thing, but let's see, that's just my perspective. Okay, so Funny working on Heyo asks, what are you binge watching?
You know what? I don't actually watch much TV.
Same.
I think the last show I watched was the latest episodes of Money Heist. When I watch a good TV show that's really engaging, I'll watch it in an evening, like the whole thing, easily.
Yeah.
I watched all of Money Heist in an evening, like when they came out, and I watched Squid Game in a couple of days as well. So, like when there's a good show, but I don't really watch much TV.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of developers can sort of relate to this, well, not developers in general, but like pioneers can relate to this, schedule of binge watching something once you're addicted to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the questions now are sort of getting sort of off topic, but I'll finish off with this last one.
Yep.
From Ewan, what is your screen time?
That's a good question. Bad. It's probably like 13 to 16 hours in a day in total.
Yeah.
Not that great, to be fair, but that's not constant. I'm just be like on and off working, lunch, dinner, head downstairs for a bit and stuff like that. So that's not constant.
Okay, Funny asked another question, but I'm sort of obliged to skip it, so I will be doing that. Ewan asks, what is the recommended amount of dedicated RAM I should have to a Minecraft server?
4 gigabytes, Ewan. 4 gigabytes.
4 gigabytes. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, Jack is typing something, so if he has a question, okay, never mind. Okay, so nothing. Okay,
Cool.
there's a few folks typing, so I'm gonna wait for them to, finish. Meanwhile, okay, I mean, I guess we should just wait unless you have. Okay, what's your snap score from Even?
Do you want me to check? Hold on. Give me one
Yeah,
second.
remember.
It is 61,443.
Wow. I don't even know what mine is. Okay, while we're waiting, I'll pull up mine.
In the meantime, guys, thank you very much for hosting me. I
The
really
pleasure
enjoyed
is
it.
ours.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here and to be able to talk in front of an audience. So thank you very much.
I don't have much of a snap score actually. I have like what 5,800 and something.
Yeah, I mean, I've had Snap for a really long time, so I don't use it too much.
Yeah. Okay, so still waiting. If there's anything else you'd like to add to the discussion, feel free to. Now's the time. If anyone else in the audience would like to actually come up and ask their question here, that's also acceptable.
I think we're good.
Oh, Ari came up.
Hey,
Yeah, what's up?
Alistair. Hi. Thanks so much for coming on. It's really great to have you.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy that you're 17 years old and working with companies raising money and working with international teams. It's really insane.
Yeah, it's awesome to be in the position that I'm in right now. You get to meet a lot of great people, especially as you mentioned internationally. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't think there are any more questions. So with that, I think we should conclude this, sort of session we had. Feel free to give your closing statement if you have anything you'd like to say.
Yeah. Do open source, keep writing code, and 2022 is going to be a good year. So thank you very much.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, well, for the community, we'll be recording this and uploading this to Spotify in case you'd like to, listen to it again or share the conversation with anyone, friend or family member. Or if you'd like to, just listen to it again. And thank you so much, Alistair. It was a pleasure having you on our, show, and we hope to do this again sometime soon, maybe with the entire Giggle team if they're, down.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And yeah, thank you everyone for joining and have a great, rest of your day. I'll be ending the session now. Thanks everyone.
It was good having you.
It was great having you.